think it's very interesting to know that between JJ and Ron, you brought forth perspectives of how a startup leader deals with growth, ideation growth, as well as later the eventual exit, like in JJ's case. I'm curious, from your perspective, what do you see is happening right now, specifically for your company?
We are a startup, so our volume is probably not going to be as big as Amazon, Instacart, and those more mature companies. But we also have a very interesting observation during this period of time and seeing how the crisis really changed the dynamics here. First things we see is that seems a lot of people stay at home these days. We see our home category have more than 150% increase in the recent sales. So increased significantly over our home categories. So, and also beauty category increased quite a bit. Also, it's a 100% increase on beauty category, which means that people don't forget to put their makeups on while they are staying at home. So this is important for remote meetings. Of course, on the other hand, we're also seeing a decline in terms of the fashion clothing sales, like both women and men's category. We see about 16% reductions at the same time. Clearly, people are not putting attention for buying clothes right now. Instead, they're putting more attention buying home goods and probably grocery goods. That's why I think Instacart will have a pretty big increase in terms of their sales volume also at the same times. From a geographic perspective, we're also seeing different cities getting impacted the most. New York City, we see a pretty dramatic reductions in terms of the volume. So, and clearly New York is the one that hit the most by this crisis. And on the other hand, younger demographic seems to actually having a higher sales volume than older demographic. I think younger demographic is actually pioneering the switch from offline purchasing behavior to the online purchasing behavior. So that's why we are seeing more and more young people start to actually adopting e-commerce and online shopping behaviors than what it used to be. So I think these are very interesting business findings from our own data set here. So we believe it's actually very useful to actually share these insights to a broader community and let people understand that. Another thing I also observe is the change in terms of the company culture perspective. It's that people start to realize where things can happen. So we always need to prepare for the worst. We always need to assume that your business could go out of business on the second date, no matter it's in the good time or in the bad times. So that's why this is just a very simple reminder to all of us, is that nothing is stable. So you have to operate in I would call it a non-stable environment so that you can always prepare your disaster plan. This is super important. The second thing is that maintaining an open culture within the company is super important. And then the fact is that you don't want to build a culture that only a particular set of opinions always you only hear one group of people talking about one particular set of experience. Especially when you're facing crisis, you have to be transparent. You have to let the company know what's happening. And you have to listen to different people's perspective and different opinion so that you can make sure that you make the best decision at the end. And the most important thing is that I don't really care. Before you go into a meeting, I don't really care you are making the right decision at the beginning of the meeting. But I want to make sure that I'm making the right decision at the end of the meetings. So I think this is the very critical cultures that you want to make for the companies. So, and even for the country to some degree. So that's why I want to share this several findings that I find is very interesting during this period of time.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And JJ, I think Instacart is bigger, and you have mentioned it's seeing exponential growth. What's your perspective since the beginning of this year?
Yeah, so we're certainly living through some tough times as a community, but also all of us have are experiencing it differently. So at work, we're facing a very, very different world just compared to a few weeks ago, right? And it is true that the demand for our service has gone up just significantly. So, Instacart for if it is a live audience, I'd ask people, how many people use Instacart, right? And by now, Instacart is almost a household name. How incredible just a few weeks of time things can change this much. Because I catch our company in the news almost on a daily basis. It's becoming basically, for many people, it's becoming a lifeline, and it's both exciting for us because all of a sudden we all look for meaning in our work, right? But all of a sudden the meaning is just so black and white clear. The feedback from our customers, many of them are elderly, and some of them have high health risk, and we're just proud that we can deliver food to them so that they don't have to take risks to go to the stores themselves, right? And at the same time, it's very humbling because no matter how much work we have been doing in the last many weeks, we still can't keep up with the overwhelming demand. So we are committed to do as much as possible to address everybody's needs. So for those of you who have still have difficulties placing orders, please bear with us. We are working on it. Instacart is a online grocery company. We have reached to about 80+% of the U.S. households, and we are in both U.S. and Canada. The market is a pretty big market. It's a $1 trillion market, total market. And it's also, before the recent lockdown, online grocery is actually a very, very small fraction. It's about 2 to 3%, right? And so, certainly lots of opportunities there. But I like what Ron shared earlier. There's the retailing moving online. That's the larger trend. At any given moment, the trend may be slower or faster, right? So what we're witnessing now is because the physical world start to have more obstacles, then the activities in the virtual world start to pick up at a very much accelerated pace. And then grocery moving online is lagging behind other retailer, right? That's because the logistics of dealing with perishable goods is usually more complex, right? But we are now getting to a point that these real-time deliveries, same-day deliveries, and being able to pick and deliver in just a couple of hours start to become reality because of mobile phones, because of cloud computing. So that start to become much more reality compared to, let's say, 10 years ago, right? So that trend is only going to accelerate. Very much agree with Ron. And then, with the recent lockdown, we only see that acceleration becomes even clearer.
It's very interesting. If I were to quickly recap on your two companies, one, JJ, you are dealing with an exponential growth where to ensure delivery quality, to ensure performance at its, what you design, your vision really holds, is the paramount need. While on Ron, for your company, you guys are embracing this growth, but you are seeing a little bit of a category mix. I'd love to know, based on what kind of metrics you are anchoring your current operating strategies, and what are some insights you think you would recommend our audience about, how do you really deal with change to really make data-driven decisions? You have mentioned about dashboard too.
So basically, because I'm looking at the dashboards, I guess. So one thing I can say is we actually shifted quite a bit. So what dashboards we look at is the company core metrics. Before the COVID-19 crisis, we used to pay a lot more attention to things like user growth, right? And total amount of GTV, right? GTV growth. For any e-commerce, these are very important numbers. But today, the entire company, we pay way more attention to a different metric. That is the total number of delivers we can do in a day. And all we care about is we want to do more delivers, hopefully as much as possible, every day than the day before. Right now, everything else is secondary because our service has become an essential service. People are waiting for food. So we have reoriented all the teams in the company to focus on just one thing. And there's still just tons of work to do to make sure that that number keeps going up. And also, our hope is goes up at a ever increasing speed.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Shifting your focus from growing this two-sided marketplace of both demand and supply to now really focusing on making sure supply is at this point not just delighting customer, but to your point, this is about essential service. We better make sure every delivery has made its perfect trip to the customer's hands.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Ron, do you have different kind of observations, strategy or pivoting? What are some thoughts behind that?
And then we're actually seeing a pattern, as I just mentioned before, some of our category increase really well and some of our category is going into a different directions. So we have a very interesting mixed shift in that situations. And then, but one of the good thing is that we always believe our long-term visions and long-term trends that people are actually shifting from offline to online. And this is one of the key motivations for Imran to found this company and why I decided to join this company. And this situation actually reconfirmed this belief. And then it actually accelerated the whole trend of having people to adopt the paradigms. So to some degree, we are lucky in the sense that we doesn't need to change our high level strategy and philosophy here. But we just need to execute faster. So that's actually the most interesting part of it. Is that originally, when we're planning to do some things that was in 1 year, in 1.5 years, in 2 years, we all decide to accelerate it and we try to finish it in 2 months or 3 months. And this is the kind of start of speed that we want to achieve in this moment. And in particular, what we are becoming more careful about is the unit economies of our items in these cases. So we start to pay more attention to the unit economy instead of just growing the company without any sort of calculations about how things work in the long term. So that's one thing. The second thing is really about we realize the importance of increasing the number of selections for our users. So the more you increase your selections without taking the inventory risk, the more you can actually become flexible to make adjustments to different situations. So that's why it makes job shipping marketplaces to become really, really important, for us to grow the economy's behavior in the futures. I think in this sense, I think Instacart and JJ's company is doing very well at the beginning. So Instacart is already a marketplace, started from the very beginning. I think this is a very, very good strategy. So that's why I believe this is going to be also the long-term trend. I think the e-commerce business is going to head into in the futures.
Yeah. Regarding this, regarding the current situation where almost majority of us are all required to work from home, which also has created the seismic change in your business economics, I'm also want to shift our lens slightly back to the people that's in this equation. What have you seen is the sort of new things you didn't realize, or what are some new experiences from working from home, the mandatory working from home for you personally?
And I talked to quite a few people. It's actually checking with my teams on a regular basis about their working from home experience. And one interesting thing I find is that many people start to realize working from home is actually more efficient than most people used to expect. So especially you realize the improvement of the teleconferencing and networking infrastructure actually make working from home to be a more pleasant experience right now. I also find a few things that actually working from home is forcing people to move into the positive direction. First, it incentivizes people to create meeting only when it's necessary. So, and then you also force people to do better preparations before the meetings, before they come in to do the like teleconferencing call. And finally, it asks people to learning to practice how do you do active listening during a meeting environments instead of like just like jumping to interrupt people's. I feel like those are all very positive like culture changes that working from home that help to bring us into. So previous, I hear a lot of concern about working from home, and then I start to realize it's because like when you have some people in the office and some people are working remotely, it was creating some kind of unbalanced advantage for the people in the office, and they start to feel like, okay, working from home people is like less efficient in that case. But when everyone start to bring in equal places at the very beginning, I think the advantage of working from home start to show up in this case. And if that's the case, if people
leveling the playing field.
Yeah, it's leveling the playing field to some degree, right? So once you level the playing field, you start to see the advantage of doing that. And then also increase the empathies across different team members. Like, okay, now I really understand like what happens for my global team members, like what kind of issues, suffering they are facing in that case, and actually help to increase the collaboration, improve the collaboration and empathies like among your whole teams. So overall, I think it's really positive changes. So no matter what change is going to happen in the future, I feel like this is really helping the teams. And then like in the long term, it may actually make the leader start to rethink, okay, should I start to embrace more about this kind of working from home cultures? So it may actually have long-term impact for particular sector like business traveling sectors, mobility sectors, and those places. They may actually see their usage level may not be as high as what used to be pre-crisis. But of course, for some sector, it's a good news.
Yeah, JJ, what are your perspectives from working from home?
Just want to very much agree with everything Ron said. Share more or less the exact same experience. And Karen, we always like in the past, people working remotely always have this concern, right? Are they going to be as efficient, as productive? Are they going to miss out on all the so-called hallway conversations, right? And will they be able to build trust with the team, right? At the same time, we always know that there are companies that are successful that have 100% remote workforce. And now that, almost all the companies, from small companies like us to the biggest companies like Google and Microsoft, Facebook, all those companies, everybody's working from home. And this actually validates that not only you can, but also once you have everybody working from home, just like Ron was saying, it leveled the playing field, right? The so-called hallway conversation, not only you're not missing it, they're just moving in a virtual world, right? Like, for example, we use Slack at work, and many companies use Microsoft Teams. Your company may use something else, right? So all these things, all these conversations, including small talks, they're happening online now. And not only you can participate in these hallway conversations, in fact, you can probably be present in 100 different ones. Right? So the challenge becomes how do you find these resources, right? So because my team, on a daily basis, at any given time, there's at least 50 different active channels going on. So how do we make sure that the people can keep up? Nobody can, right? So I actually asked a TPM to be full-time, to just dive into all these channels and compile a daily report. And then every night he sends out the daily report to the entire team, so that people can see how, what interest they may have and which channel is the right one to dive into, right? So it is really, eye-opening that how much people can just quickly adapt and make the working from home arrangement more productive. Certainly, I don't want to pretend that there's no downside. Of course, sometimes feeling the isolation from your coworkers become hard. And if you happen to be one of those people who just joined the company and you haven't had a chance to have enough face time to build trust with your team, this is going to be hard. All of us need to learn how to best adapt. But overall, I think that as Ron alluded to earlier, even after the lockdown is over, enough companies, enough people will see the value of being remote. It makes it possible to think, can you have a world-class team that is 100% geographically distributed, right? And all these things becomes the new possibility.
You are both tech leaders, so I'm super curious, from leaders' perspective, what makes your team members continue to shine in this remote working situation? How do you reassure folks how to continue to shine?
I always think sometimes when we are in a moment, we always feel that this particular moment is special, right? And certainly the moment we are in, the situation is unprecedented. That is absolutely true. But certain things, certain principles, the reason they're good principles is because it doesn't matter which moment you're in, they hold true, right? And do your best to be a good leader or good employee, good team member. Many of the same things still hold true, right? First of all, let's think about how do you want to be valuable to the team, right? First of all is do the best you can with your work, right? This is regardless whether you happen to be in an office or at home, right? And the second is, people always ask, there's somebody way smarter than me once said that, we all look to create a value, right, for the team. But before you can be valuable, first ask yourself, how can you be useful to others, right? So that's a much simpler question to ask. How can I be useful to my team? Whether you're a leader or a team member, it's the same question. And the second is, in this particular moment, because you don't have the physical presence, you don't have the face time with others, it becomes even more important for us to be present. And present meaning, whether it's on video conference calls, on Slack or Team or other type of workplace chat environment, right? And or in even, let's say, email or documentation, right? Make sure that you're to answer other people's questions. That goes back to usefulness. Right? So all these principles are still the same.
Yeah, if I were to recap properly, I think your key message here is whatever makes you a successful business professional still hold true. The only main change really is means of communication. The means of communication really, if we adapt it in the right way, hopefully shouldn't take away the value of who you are and your visibility. Ron, any other thoughts from your perspective as you look at your new team, or if you look back at your leadership role?
So I think like both JJ and Caroline used to have been speaking two very good principles here. I want to mention some things that are probably a little bit more tactical. Working from home or working in a remote environment, it's both challenges and opportunities for a lot of people. So number one thing I just want to say tactically, this makes like written communication become more important. So, and then a lot of people used to rely on oral communications a lot. So, and especially when you have a chance to do hallway communications, that people say, okay, why not I just go grab that person and have a conversation and talk to each other. They start paying attention for written communication and how important it is. This is the best way for you to make sure that everyone in the company are aligned and transparently communicated. So I think like during this period of time, especially for non-native speakers, so such as me, it's very important to actually put my thought and put my thinkings and also the meeting notes into written forms so that like everyone can actually get to the same page with me at the same time. The second thing is that like I know a lot of people in this call is actually from Chinese communities. So one thing I used to observe before is that because of our cultures, so we tend to be a little bit shy in terms of it coming into group discussions. So especially, let's say, if you want to have like 5 people or 10 people groups or discussion scenario, so sometimes people are less willing to chime in. So that's one thing I would love to encourage more people. Just don't afraid to do that, because that's actually part of the practice you need to do to grow into a leadership roles. So if you just like keeping your heads down, getting things done, it's great, but that's not enough. If you do want to grow into a bigger role and also into playing a more cross-functional coordination responsibility, I think being able to insert yourself and project yourself into group discussion, it's a very important thing to do.
That's super helpful. Information needs to be both it's transparent, but it also creates a information overload for individuals, because if you do not write concisely, it's almost viewed, the value of your thought almost is discounted, given that everybody has so much information that they have to absorb. And I want to take us also to dig a little bit deeper into our namesake topic, which is 2020 a year of crisis or a year of opportunity? Sometimes crisis, as scary as it may seem like, is an opportunity. I'd love for you to kind of unpack that for our audience.
Crisis to me just simply accelerates the change that otherwise would happen anyway. And in some of the changes, it suppresses some of the trends. In some other ways, it accelerates and emphasizes those trends. Right. So, virtually all the crises we have been through as a community. Right. On the other hand, the burst of the bubble created opportunities. This is why you see a new generation of companies came to be. Right? Google was one of them. And in the 2007-2008 crisis, that was also a huge impact on many industries. But we bounced back. The tech sector, in particular, bounced back and adapted way more quickly. These days, we think of gig economy and gig companies as if they have existed forever. The reason that they became successful has something to do with the downturn. That's because we have a labor force that is underutilized. And that created the opportunity for the Ubers of the world to get a start. Right. So, the current crisis we are in is even more unprecedented. Economic downturns certainly affects a lot of people's lives. We don't want to discount that. But current crisis, we have a lot of people at the risk of losing lives. So very, very dire situation. But at the same time, I'm an optimist. I always feel that as a community, as a country, we will bounce back. Right? And then when we come back, it will always be stronger than before. Things may have shifted. Right? Certain industries, they may not have as bright a future as others. But overall, as the tech community, for example, we will find ways to shift the investment, shift the resource and the manpower to new industries. When the crisis start to calm down a bit, you will see a new generation of entrepreneurs moving into, breaking ground in new areas. And we will see a new crop of companies emerging. After the crisis is over, this is going to be, when we look back, this is going to be the start of a new opportunity.
This is super insightful. Never lose hope, anchor around your strength, and recognizing that resources and technology may shift to different industries, but at the same time, always believe that things will come out better. Any other thoughts that you may want to add on to
Sure.
AJ's point?
I don't want to just talk about the crisis itself. In my observations, every single company, no matter it's good company or bad company, they will go through up and down cycles. So just like for my own example, before very short, I've been into 4 companies before: IBM, Facebook, Square, and Snapchat. Every single company have go through their down times and go through their up times. So, I mean, Facebook actually have downtime multiple times. I don't know how many of you actually know that. So, but the point I want to make is that like, this is just not a macroeconomy issues. If you want to build a company, you have to prepare to have up times. You have to prepare to have down times. The differentiating point here for a great company is that at the downtime, they can make the smart decision. They can make tough decisions. They can actually get to the basics, get back to the basics, and trying to squeeze out all the bubbles and rebound again. This is what a great company can do. So that's why like every single places, for no matter whether you are in big company or small company, or you want to find your own company, you always need to prepare. You will hit the downtime at some point. The biggest differentiation here is that some people are prepared and some people are not prepared. And the people who prepare will have much higher likelihood to get out from the downtimes and then be a winner afterwards. It's very important for us to make sure that crisis is just like a necessary part of a life cycle of a company here. And then like you cannot avoid it to some degree. You always want to treat it as an opportunities. So, and it is an opportunity for the great company to start differentiate themselves with the other mediocre competitors, and then use that as opportunities to actually bring in the resource for them to grow themselves to the next level.
Yeah, sometimes when the external environment feels overwhelming, it's easy to have forgotten what we wake up to do each day is not to be scared, but it's really about anchoring around our mission, what our personal conviction is. For our audience, if we don't remember anything, what are some top 3 things you would like to call out for our audience?
One thing is that, so I mentioned the culture for the company. So I personally always like believe culture is the most important thing for a company, no matter what idea do you do, what people you're working with. So fostering an open and transparent culture within a company, and then having a company that are willing to consider everyone's opinion before making decisions. It's a very important things for us. Second thing is that like never give up if even the result doesn't go to the right direction initially. So especially when you're going into a small company or startup environment, there are a lot of trial and error here. So I mean, even like for the bigger company, there's also a lot of trial. So opportunity can come at any times, and you really just want to be ready when the opportunity comes to you. So, and then like the people who are ready are the most likely to actually be succeeding eventually. And finally, just back to the point that we discussed just now, crisis, it's a challenges, but it's also opportunities. I think many of the great companies start to come into beings during the crisis.
Very interesting, very insightful, really anchoring around your culture, making sure you are ready for change, and opportunities will only come to the prepared minds. The last one is to trust your long-term vision, and just if the road is on the right direction, sooner or later, faster or slower, you will get there. It's like running a marathon, right? What are your top of mind 3 things you would like for us to kind of take away?
Okay. First of all, I think what Ron has hit on is really spot on. I agree with everything he said. And you know, the one thing when people ask me about how I feel about how to find the success in our life, in our career in Silicon Valley and so on, right? So, I always share that my starting point is, just think about where we are. Yeah, we are in tech. We are in the Valley, the best place in the world to do tech. People sometimes say that success a lot has to do with luck. Right? That is true. But for the people already in tech, already here in the Valley, right? This community, we already have that luck. We already won the lottery. We're incredibly fortunate to be here at this moment, right? So, the question now is, how do you make the best of it? So, so that's one thought. And second is, we talked about, is this a crisis? Is this an opportunity? Right? Both Ron and I all share the same view that any crisis is also an opportunity, right? And first and most important thing is to take care of your family, take care of people around you, make sure everybody's safe. Nothing is more important than that. And then beyond that is think about what we can do at the moment to help others. And then, the other thing I want to mention is, I'm an optimist, and I always encourage everybody else to be an optimist. It's just, I always feel that in a way, being a pessimist, to worry about the worst is, that's a raw deal, because you worry, and then if the worst doesn't happen, then you waste your energy. If the worst does happen, then you suffer twice. So you cannot win, right? So
that's a great quote.
be an optimist. We know that we'll come out stronger. You will find great opportunities, right? Sooner or later, even if you are not in one, even if you don't feel you are in one right now, right? And also, be a risk taker. Because we see that every moment is an opportunity, always be a risk taker. There's this Marcus Aurelius said, obstacle is the way. Right? So when you feel that you are no longer feeling the resistance when you move forward, you're probably in the wrong place. You're no longer learning as much. Right? Risk taking is about to put yourself in front of obstacles and overcome that. Only then you can achieve growth. Only then you can achieve real success.
You had mentioned earlier about if you worry and it doesn't happen, you wasted your energy worrying. If you worry and it does happen, you actually suffer twice. That's such an incredible quote. The question goes, what's your thoughts balancing growth, margin, as well as risk profile in these kind of economic turbulence?
Yeah. So
the factors are balancing growth, margin, as well as your risk profile.
So yeah, I can take that one. But before you answer that one, actually, I'd love to comment on the VR AR things. So because that was,
yes, please. Yeah, sorry.
That was the things that Snapchat actually do quite a bit, like as a main business there. So I think here's just my personal opinion. So doesn't represent anyone else. So I think like I'm actually not a big fan for VR. So specifically, and in particular, so I think VR have some fundamental issues that hasn't resolved yet. So like especially about the viewer experience, about the use cases. I think if they did not solve the fact that you need to wear a huge helmet that without dizziness, like when you're watching the content, I think VR is still going to be really far away from us. So, and then on the other hand, I think like AR's future is going to be better. So, I mean, particularly when you talk about augmented reality, if you consider Snapchat's like face filters is one kind of augmented reality, I think there was already some very obvious like lightweight use cases that you can use for augmented reality technology. And also like there are already a business model that are building on top of AR. So once you have like these two things, once you have a technology plus a business case built on top of it, then you can potentially see a snowball effect that can help to build a vertical business out of that. So I think like AR is actually ahead of the games than VR right now. So there was a hybrid category, which is mixed reality. So such as HoloLens and Magic Leap and that type of directions. So I do think like that's still a TBD. So I think we do have products in the market right now. If you go to CES this year, there's probably like 20, 30 different brands of, I would say, wearable, like mixed reality sort of lenses that was available. But I haven't seen a business model coming out of it yet. So that's why, like, if I want to rank it, I would say AR probably go first. Mixed reality and VR probably, I feel like I haven't seen a very solid cases yet, but maybe things will prove me if I'm wrong in this case. So yeah, just like sort of my personal opinions on this one.
Very interesting. That reminded me of how Alibaba announced that Alibaba is going to use AR to bring the online shopping closer to your experience in trying out clothes in the retail stores.
Yeah, so I mean, that was always one of those kind of cherry on the ice cheesecake type of things. So it's a great thing to talk about. But how exactly this is going to change users' actual experience, is there necessary features? I would say not yet at this moment. So, and then like, we'll probably wait until a date so that this kind of technology will become a necessary features, a utility features that everyone cannot get away from. Then you will see actually a great futures for that. So
I'm imagining you also have to deal with the merchandising, supply and demand at the unit level to some degree, right?
You know, in the end, Instacart is a business, so we definitely pay attention to cost of things. And you know, as I said before, because in this current environment, we're operating with a different set of principles at the moment. Because we're essential service, we need to solve that problem first, right? But before the current lockdown, you know, we certainly pay attention to unit economics, and we certainly want to make sure that we don't run out of money by losing money too much on every order, right? And at some point, we also want to show our investors that there is a point in the future that this can be a profitable business as well, right? So, you know, there's a lot of hard work to do to make sure that that happens. I'm not going to go into too much details about how, you know, we realize these unit economics. But you know, in our business, the complexity is, you know, to a degree even bigger, because not only on the one side we want to make sure that customers can afford the service, because you know, before I joined Instacart, before I started paying attention to Instacart, I always assumed that you know, the customer base for this service is for more affluent people, so that they can afford the delivery, right? But you know, once I joined, I realized it's well, actually before I joined, when I was doing research about the business, right, I started to realize it's not true at all. In fact, a lot of people who use the service are working class people. In fact, you know, all of us do delivery ourselves, right? Just so that we can experience our platform, just so that we can experience how our shoppers, you know, do their work every day, right? So when I deliver, very often I deliver into, you know, different types of neighborhoods, including working class, middle class neighborhoods, as well as more affluent ones, right? That's because in the end, this is a platform that saves people's time, and everybody need extra time. The moms with kids, they need more time than the people who actually have the luxury to go into the grocery stores, right? So, when we look at these lenses, it's very important to make sure that wherever we do, the service needs to be, affordable. Otherwise, we won't have customer. On the other hand, there are people who also depend on the platform to make a living. Right? These are the shoppers, and in the current crisis, it's more important, not because they're no longer just performing a job, right? They are also, to a degree, they are on the front line. They are going to the grocery store, and they are certainly, in order to perform this very important service to others, they're taking risks. And so we're very mindful of that. We want to make sure that wherever we can do to provide the best opportunity for them to, make a living and do it safely. I also want to make sure that the other side of the marketplace, customers can afford it, especially now that we have elderly people who may have limited means to also need to place order, right, and then get the grocery delivered. So the complexity is is way more complex in our business compared to some of the some other type of retailing. It's a solvable problem. It's just that it's harder.